Welcome into the Bite Meat Podcast. We have another edition for you today. We have another twist on the barbecue game, and we always like to keep it fresh. Of course, brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop. My friend Rick Martin, great dude. If you ever need anything, please go over there. Don't forget to pick up your OG sauce. Self-plug right there, but that's okay. And today we're going to talk about, I like to tell stories because I think the background stories of so many of our great pitmasters that have joined us, so many CEOs and leaders in the industry that have joined us, you know, they all share a common thread of the passion that they have for this game, but also, you know, not everybody starts, you know, with the old silver spoon and, you know, daddy or some inheritance or something, you know, getting them into the game. They start from the bottom up, whether it's, you know, in the back of a restaurant washing dishes or food truck or cooking out of your garage or everything. But this is an interesting one to me. And we've had some terrific world-class, highly trained, classically trained chefs. We've had a few of them on here. The ones that come to mind, of course, are Patrick and Aaron Fegis over at Fegis Barbecue, who have been at the highest level. And then they decided to enter the game. Today, got an old familiar face for me. I used to live in that neck of the woods where I first met him over at a place called Rafa's in the Kingwood area. David Welch from Firecraft Barbecue. And David, first of all, great to have you on. And I wanted to kind of lay out the story before we get into the particulars here for our listeners. And that is, you are, like they were, classically trained is what I call it. I don't know what you call it. Le Cordon Bleu, I believe, trained chef, worked at some fine restaurants for years and years and years. And here you are on this podcast wearing that ball cap and a T-shirt, doing some barbecue, man. Got your Astros hat on, got your Firecraft Barbecue T-shirt on.
That's right.
How'd you get from there to here? And then we'll get into the whys and some of the particulars that can help some of our listeners.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you. It's quite an honor, you know. I don't like to talk about myself too much, you know, but I took a lot of people to get us here. So no, it's a real honor. And you know, I just want to say first how wonderful Tony, Rafa, and Leslie, you know, they're true gems of people. And you know, I worked for him for almost 14 years, like 13 and a half years in all. And just learned a whole lot, you know, just a tried and true independent operator. He's 40 years in now. Just a gem of the guy, you know, a pillar in the community. And you know, I learned a lot from him. And frankly, I learned a lot from him and Leslie about, you know, being married in the industry and you know, the spousal. You know, they're just such a role model for us in my life and my wife. I have to say that you know, it's very important that I have a lot of support from my wife, and she's great. She teaches elementary school. She's been in the same school for like 21 years, almost 22
Give
years.
them a shout out. What school?
Oh, it's a Bear Branch Elementary.
That's where my kids went. That's where all three of my kids went.
You know, it's great too. As we're far enough in our career where, you know, the people come into the restaurant and they say, "Oh, you know, little Johnny had Teresa back when he was, you know, yay high, and now he's going to Texas State." And it's real great, man. You know, to be a part of this community. We are a bedroom community up here, and you know, listening to your other podcasts and stuff, all the stories of hard times and, you know, weather catastrophes and things like that. We've all been through it up here, and it's great. It's without the community, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I just really have to hats off to them. I have some stories about that, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here without my community, and I know that greatly. So,
well, I know your work. Obviously, I've eaten your food. It's terrific. But let's go back to, you know, when you decided and had this passion for the industry and you decided to get trained, you know, at the highest level. What did you envision then? And then we're going to get into what you envision now.
Well, I tell the story like this. My father, you know, in high school, you know, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Just kind of freewheeling, you know, like most kids do. But I was real artsy. When I was a young kid from 3 years old, I was born in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was selling books up and down, the east coast of Florida when it was developing. This is 70, 71, 72, 73. First solid food I ate was crab meat, right? But then we moved back. My mom and dad are both from Birmingham, Alabama. And my grandmother owned a restaurant in Sylacauga, Alabama in the 50s. So my mother's side of the family were really all very, my grandmother had 5 brothers and sisters, and they all had,
Mm-hmm.
farms, property, and that. And just grew up with that. We had a fourth Sunday in May was our year annual, family reunion, and it was huge. To
Mm-hmm.
tell you about the food spreads, that we used to do, it was amazing. And I was always enamored with that, and we grew up a mile back in the woods on property. We cut a road in ourselves, and I didn't really have any friends growing up when I was from, I guess, the age of 4 to about 12.
Mm-hmm.
I really was just with my family and my little sister, and we had property, and we had little gardens, and I was always next to mom. I remember
Mm-hmm.
her, tenderizing, chop steak or steak with the side of a plate. We didn't have a meat mallet. She'd use the side of a plate and all that. And grandmother's house, and the biscuits on the stove, and just really food was all around. That's really what I paid attention to, and I would draw and sketch and things like that. So and bump up to high school, my the first says the first heart attack my dad had, said, "Dad, I want to be an artist." Oh, you're not going to make any money. You're going to. So he said, let's go down to Westheimer here, and I'm going to take you to the starving artist,
Mm-hmm.
street there, and we'll tour up and down there and see if you really want to do that. So I still stuck with it. And in 1987, I won the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo art
Oh, that's
contest
big. Yeah.
for well, they paid for first 2 years of school. I got a scholarship, and I got to go study with the Cowboy Artist of America for 4 weeks, and did some things that, I was really into art is what I want to say. And but
Mm-hmm.
really, by the time I turned 17, 18 years old, I don't know if I want to do this or not. So
Mm-hmm.
I started, my first job was waiting tables in a Landry's in Sugarland, actually. And I was always kind of gravitated to the kitchen. I
Mm-hmm.
remember all the prep going on in that. And then everybody wanted to get that, that waiting job at Papado, back
Yeah.
in the day, the
Yeah.
Pappas restaurant. So I took me 3 times, I think, to apply there, but I finally got the job. And then I just immediately wanted to go in the kitchen. So John Brock was my GM, and real hands-on guy, super guy. He's a fish buyer for the company now, but he let me, and I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, 18 years old, working back there with 3 big old dudes, and you learn real quick. And if we peeled one shrimp, we peeled 350 pounds, or we'd do 60 or 80 pounds of chicken tenders at a time. And I mean, real work,
Yeah.
real prep work. So I got pretty good at that. I moved up in the company as much as you could without a degree. I was lead, like a kitchen expediter, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, Basically a manager, had some duties and responsibilities, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I like this. I'm good with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
I tell, I have they said, well, why did you become a chef? And I said, well, because I have really good eye hand coordination,
Mm-hmm.
and my knife skills, and trying to be precise and fast and efficient and all those things, comes from that rote rehearsal,
Mm-hmm.
that doing it all the time. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I liked working with my hands, and I liked feeding people, and that came from my youth. So they gave me a chance. So I went to culinary school. I went to the Art Institute of Houston, and I had my skills chef. His name was Peter Lair. He's no longer with us for years now, but he was the old classic Swiss chef, chef like that, the full toque on, big old dude. And he was just real genuine guy, and he had a little accent. And one day in class, I already had some experience, so I did pretty
Mhm.
well in class. I was always a teacher's pet, kind of a nerd in culinary school. In both schools. And then he said, "Chef, what are you doing here? You need to." And I said, "I don't know. What do you mean, chef? I want to become a chef." He says, "No, no, no. You need to get out of here. You need to go to Europe and work
Yeah.
around and travel around and do that, and work for the other chef." And I said, well, "Okay, well, great. I have no idea, how I'm going to
Yeah.
do that. I have no idea." And then about 2 weeks later, the Cordon Bleu was there doing a seminar.
Hmm.
And, he's, come to find out, he helped me along in that
Put
endeavor.
in a good word and all
He
that. Yeah.
saw, he saw some drive and some real passion in me, I guess. And that was the first real chef that saw something and said, "Hey, you need to go do this," And I said, "Yeah,
Hmm.
sure." So by this time I'm like 21 years old. And um, anyway, I went,
Hmm.
and man, it was great. I lived there almost 4 years, like three
Very.
years and 10 months, something like that. And yeah, I tried my best. I was eating lunch downstairs with the chefs. I worked in the prep kitchen downstairs, so becoming friendly with the chefs and doing well in class. I was, like I said, like I was 21 to 25 when I went. So
Hmm.
I was old enough to know why I was there and young enough to have the stamina to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Because if the Cordon Bleu, there's many students that come from all over the world, and some of them are
Mhm.
there to kind of, it's just like any other school. You get out of it what you put into it, right?
Yeah.
So I was all about it. And so yeah, I worked in some nice places. I worked in Chez Maxime's. I worked in Closerie de Lilas, which is another 100-year-old institution. Worked in the south of France for 6 months at La Bastide de Saint Tropez with all the high fashion models and
Yeah.
stuff. But that was great. I worked with some journeymen down there. They call them their saisonniers. They call them. They work in the
Hmm.
mountains in the wintertime and they come down to the beaches in the summertime, and they travel around and
Yeah.
work. It's just a real cool, very fraternic, real fun time. So
Hmm.
learned a lot,
So
got,
you're thinking at this point, I'm going to be a chef at
yeah.
a
Oh yeah.
fancy restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
obviously you did,
Mm-hmm.
and so you come back, and where did you work here, and then I want to get to something else.
So yeah, funny. I came and I worked for a couple of independent of George Guy. He's a
Hmm.
real well-known French chef in Houston.
Yeah.
Spent a little time with him, and then I said, oh, maybe I'll go back to Papa's, and see what they're doing, because Michael Velarde, he was this Papa's Brothers Steakhouse was
Yeah.
hiring, and so I applied and I was hired on as executive sous chef of the steakhouse under Velarde.
Hmm.
And from that and from my experience at Papado, the years I worked there, I opened 2 or 3 stores, and 610 was my main store. But they had a position for the concept chef of Papado open up, and all
Hmm.
right, perfect. I slid right in there, and yeah, I'm like 25, 26 years old now, and 27. And Pappas is great. I learned a lot of corporate structure and a lot about hospitality, and gained a lot of experience from them and systems and all of that. I really enjoyed that part of it. Did not like that corporate chef gig too
Yeah.
much. I was
Yeah.
a young kid. They'd fly me up to Dallas, and I'd have to tell these, established GMs, I'm like a punk kid walking in there
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, you're not making your roux right, or this is
Yeah.
not exact, that." So,
Yeah.
yeah, that wore on me a little bit. So I was like, man, I need to go work for another independent. And that, a couple years into that, I said, nah, hung that up. And then that's when I got a hold of Tony Raffa. I answered an
Hmm.
ad in the newspaper for him. And yeah, so you know,
So how 14 years you said it with Rafa?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so you made a name for yourself, certainly in Houston,
Hmm.
and especially in the Kingwood area.
Look,
Very,
a
very.
little bit. I never really, won awards and all that. I say it like this. I concentrated on raising a family.
Hmm.
I met my wife and we, fell in love, and Kingwood's just a great place to raise a family. And that's really what I was concentrating on. I had a good stable job, and really I was fulfilled, in what I was
Mhm.
doing with Tony. He was a great operator, still learning a lot from him. And we had that opportunity to build Rafa's. He asked me to come along, and that was great. I mean, that was a big challenge. Design the whole kitchen, design the whole menu. I mean, from ground up, we
Mhm.
sat together and did the whole thing. What a great experience, that was, to be able to do that. Um,
Well,
and yeah, and but I say, like, I try to walk softly but carry a big stick. I really didn't chase any awards or anything like that. I was just really concentrating on raising a family and doing a good job for the partnership I was in.
okay, so
Um,
that's the perfect backdrop to now it's Firecraft Barbecue, and you made
mhm,
this leap, starting with a food truck.
mhm,
And I'm just curious, what itch did you have to scratch? Because you could have just been climbing, build, maybe opening your own place,
mhm.
Welch's, David's, whatever,
Yeah.
and have the white linen and have the fancy menu and all that, which
Mhm,
obviously you could have done.
mhm.
Where was the lure for barbecue? What was the attraction?
So it's Tony's fault. He bought me a little. He bought me a little Fast Eddie's Cook Shack, a little Fast Eddie's cabinet smoker.
Hmm.
And man, I got on that thing and I started playing with that. I mean, I smoked everything from frog legs to shrimp, crab meat. We started smoking the ossobuco before we cooked it, and I mean, all this stuff. I just went crazy on that thing. It was really
Hmm.
fun. I have, like a lot of chefs. I don't know. I have severe ADHD, right? I get bored really fast with things, and I beat something to death and I move on to the next thing, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I really beat that thing up. I tell Tony he got the best years of my life. I'm 55 now, but we really did some good work, and it was full time, and 60 hours a week minimum, Sunday brunch, the whole thing. So that really gave me a good foundation, though. And I said, man, when I turned 45 is when I said, I'm gonna bust out and try to do something on my own. And I had a contract with Tony, of course, and a pretty healthy non-compete. So when I broke out to do barbecue, I asked for his blessing, after
Hmm.
after a few months, and I said, man, hey, I'm not competing against you or anything like that. I appreciate you. I want to cook barbecue. Would you give me your blessing to do that? And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. And so what I did is I wanted to see what production barbecue looked like. Right.
Okay.
I really didn't know. So I actually went to work with Ronnie and Nancy Weber at Tin Roof Barbecue. I worked there almost a year,
Hmm.
and kind of learned, got a lot of respect for Ronnie. I mean, he's the dude, sleeping in his in the restaurant, and stuff. And Breck was there, and just learned a lot. I'd say, just like everywhere else, you learn what to do and you learn what not to do, and you
Hmm.
formulate in your own mind, how you want to do things. But we had a catering in spring, and we went up there and we went to go visit Will and Nicole Buckman at
Hmm.
Corkscrew when they had the trailer.
Right.
And I want to tell you something, man. I got out of that catering van and I looked there was a line of like 65, 75 people in line
Hmm.
going to this little black, food truck.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is something,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember as a chef, we don't run out of stuff. We don't 86 things like that. We don't
Hmm.
we don't just, and they're almost proud of it, like, hey, you
Hmm.
bet, do you if you want turkey, you might not get it when you get up there. You might not get this when you get up there. And I was like, whoa. And I
Yeah.
said, man, it was very attractive. I said, there's this guy, he's cooking on his own terms,
Hmm.
doing what he wants to do. And I've never seen language like that, like a little sign up there, like, hey, you just waited in line 45 minutes. You better know what you want by the time you get to the window, basically, right? Because we don't have time to dicker around with you. You really need to, and there's not going to be any refunds. And if you order fatty brisket and you're not going to complain about the fat and all this. I said, man, these rules, hey, come late, lose weight. And, I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, this is crazy. So I was really attracted to that, for some reason. And
Yeah.
so yeah, and after Tin Roof, I just said, man, I'm gonna start catering, and I literally got yeah, even going back a couple of years, I bought a offset smoker, and burnt out the fire grate the first year. I was building fires as fast as I could. Every other day I was smoking something, learning. Like
Yeah.
everybody else, I'm on the internet. I'm looking on YouTube and
Yeah.
trying to learn, and just I was a sponge about it, kind of a geek, about it.
Mhm. How does the
And
background of what you had in your training translate to what you were doing, learning?
well, yeah. Again, building foundation, layering flavors. That's a good question. Just adherence to technique,
Mhm.
and trying to develop my own technique, and every chef, I'll tell you, it's not the tool, it's the carpenter, right? So
Mhm.
every chef, every pit master has their own equipment, the way they do things. I use a rotisserie smoker. It works best for me. I don't have to move briskets around. There's no real hot spots in it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It just,
Yeah.
I get consistent, repeatable results, and that's what you want as a chef, and so but I learned on a stick burner that was hard to keep temperature on. It was a Pitts by JJ.
Yeah.
I came home with that thing, and my wife said, "What did you buy? What? How much? How much did you spend?" No, honey, I promise. I'm gonna really practice, and
I had one
I'm
of
gonna,
those for years. I had a
yeah,
picture there
right.
years.
I'm gonna do my best. I promise. I'm really gonna work at it.
Yeah. Mm.
And looking back, all that's funny, but yeah, you have to dig in and do it, and just really digging in and learning why people do certain things. And I was trying to go to every barbecue place I could. I tell you, I did. She had friends in Austin. Of course, she went to UT, and so I went and I spent the 3 hours in line at Franklin's, with Aaron,
Mhm.
and I saw him there through the fence, and I'm like, hey. Hey, can I talk to you? He's like, yeah, man, come on over. What a genuine dude. This guy's on top of the world right now.
He's been on this podcast.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
I heard it. Genuine guy. He comes over and I says, hey, I'm really trying to get into barbecue. Can I come work for you for free for like 6 weeks? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's nice. I appreciate the sentiment, but we have basically like a list this long of people
Yeah.
waiting to come work for us. So I said, all right. But he was very, man, he spent like 40 minutes with me just talking, showed me the
Mhm.
pits, showed me the fire, opened the door. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, man, these people are cool.
Mhm.
And yeah, all these people, we used to go to Gatlin's, with
Mhm.
from Greg and his mom and dad, and back when they had the little shack. And I just was really kind of fell in love with the whole thing, the fast casual, get your own silverware, and this is what we have. I really like the simplicity of it. I'd come from managing, I don't know, 1,000 highly perishable ingredients, and having
Yeah.
to always, a soup, a salad, two specials, a meat special, all this every single day. And I said, man, if I could just do 5 or 8 things better than anybody else, that's probably a business.
Mhm.
If I could just, hone it down and really
Yeah.
concentrate on quality on a few things. And that's really what was attractive to me
Mhm.
getting into it. But I can't say enough about how genuine everyone in the industry is. Will and Nicole Buckman, genuine, talk to you, tell me things. Good luck. Hey man, I like what you're doing. Back right before John Brotherton passed, man, I was in the food truck at that time, and
Mhm.
we're in Kingwood, so Sloan Rinaldi.
Yeah.
Sloan is working in her food truck. Back when Allspa, she converted his garden area into
Yeah.
seating. I could throw a rock and hit her thing from where I was serving, at the
Yeah.
park over here.
Sloan's been
And-
on this podcast.
oh yeah, in town center. She's a dear friend. She comes in all the time. I'll have
Yeah.
to say, when she gets barbecue, she comes to us.
Atta baby.
Yeah, I'm
So the,
joking.
the thing about the barbecue culture, and one of the things I love about this podcast is that you've touched on it. The culture is incredible.
Mhm,
There are really very few secrets. Everybody's trying to pull for each other.
mhm.
And I've said this in the past. I want to get your reaction. It's not really a question. There's a lot of soul in the barbecue industry.
Oh yeah.
Everybody has, kind of bears their soul in on the plates.
Mhm,
They have a passion for it. You can do your own twist.
mhm.
Is that what is keeping you sort of in this game now?
Yeah, I just love it. I love the people. I love the camaraderie. It's really barbecue fam. You see that
Hmm.
tagline a lot, but the work is very hard. It's very grueling. You better love it or you're not going to last in it. You really I started literally in my driveway. I still have a smoke stain running up the front of my house. My wife is still mad at me about that, you know. And then in the food truck it's a great way to get started with the overhead being low and that, but it is grueling work. And you know, you can only put so much on the food truck. You know, you can only sell so much. You know, you can't do, you know, you do a couple $1,000, you know, at a sitting, but your overhead is so low that, you know, you can make it, you know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can physically stay in business. The restaurant, I'll tell you, you don't know what you don't know when
Hmm.
you start a restaurant, when you start a business. I've been cooking professionally for 30 years,
Hmm.
and you know, I can tell you the cooking's the easy part. All right,
Yeah.
it's everything else that's hard. But it'll teach you real quick. But you know, we develop people. I would much rather have a kid come along that doesn't know anything. If he has a good work ethic and you know is punctual in that, I can teach him. I don't even, you know, I don't want him to have bad habits, you know.
Yeah.
So I would rather take somebody with no experience and teach them than have somebody come along that, hey, I've done this and that and you know all that. I've been
Right.
around that block before, but yeah, you know, that comes to mind. Logan, I don't want to skip around, but you know, Logan Glenn, you were talking about him. He bought my food truck.
Oh, is
That's
that
my old
right?
food. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
food truck he has. And you know, I tried to pay it forward. I just kind of sold it to him for what I owed on it.
And he's doing
And
great.
oh, dude, he's a class act, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, he's like a master sorbetier, you know, he's
Hmm.
a master creamer. And he's buddies with the Rosemeyer guys and Ben and them over there, and he helps them, you know, we all help each other, you know, like if he called
Hmm.
me on the phone, hey, do this or do that, or I could call him about anything. I talked to Scott Moore from Tejas on text a lot, you know, hey, what
Hmm.
about this? These people are like royalty to me, you know,
Yeah.
but they're
Yeah.
so open and genuine and willing of not only their time but their knowledge. I don't think there's another industry like it, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah. I totally agree. And here's where we can kind of translate it to our listeners, whether they're backyard pitmasters or like yourself, you
Mhm.
know, established or somewhere in between. You do have to separate yourself. I mean, Texas
Mhm.
is barbecue. I mean,
Mhm.
Texas is barbecue
Yeah,
country,
yeah.
and separating yourself. What do you think it takes to really separate yourself with what you're putting out there on the plates?
I think it's always, for me, it's just been pure execution, just sheer execution. You know, it's one, you know, and we all started competing, right?
Mhm.
You know, my first barbecue competition at, you know, Humble Rodeo Barbecue Cook Off, I walked with a fourth place chicken, first one I
Mhm.
ever entered, one place out of the money, you
Oh.
know, and I was like, whoa, okay, you know, all right, I like this. This is great. You know, this is cool. And
Yeah.
then you know you don't do anything for, you know, 4 years after that. You know,
Mhm.
but yeah, you know, so much different. You know, cooking for the public is absolute. It's competition barbecue is pretty much antithetical to what we do. You know,
It's a different world. Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
and you know, we all start that way. Most of us, right? Ernest, you know, I watched Ernest get 100 and perfect 180 score on pork, you know, and walk down. He's a real great guy, genuine guy. Again, you know, he's on top right now, and but so giving of his time, and he and David, you know, really truly remarkable people. You know, they all are.
Mhm. Yeah.
Patrick Feges, you know, comes, you know, does a like a what do you call that? Like took a picture of himself in front of my food truck when we were at like Restaurant Depot one day and posted it. You know, just like, wow, this is great. This is great. You know.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, it's being able to put out a, a a a consistent product, you know, every day, not cutting corners. I think
well,
that's probably not cutting corners. What separates us from other people in real simply put is that we take that one extra step.
mhm,
You know, if we're cooking chicken, we're going to brine the chicken. We only buy natural chickens. We're going to brine it overnight.
mhm,
You know, full brine. Turkey, same way. Natural pork. You know, we dry brine our pork, our butts, and our ribs for at least 12 hours. I rub them and let them sit in the rub, you know,
mhm,
for 12 hours before I cook them. That flavor goes to the bone. You
yeah.
know, I know a lot of guys pull it out and season them, let them sweat for an hour, and then they go to the pit. We just don't, you know, when you're cooking for the public, it's just a different animal.
Well, the other thing, and this is something that I've spoken with a lot of pitmasters and chefs. Unique sides, unique
Yeah.
proteins,
Mhm.
detail oriented. You go to some
Mhm.
of these barbecue places, and not to disparage them. They're making a living, they're doing the best they can. They say, all right, potato salad, beans, let's go.
Yeah.
And
Sides are an afterthought, right?
right.
They're absolutely not an afterthought with us. Again, I pull from my grandmother from the South, the collard greens, the we call it a jalapeno spoon bread. It's just a version of her old cornbread.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, green beans, bacon and onions, squash casserole. We're known for that. Watermelon salad. We're known
Oh,
for that. These are
now
all
you're talking.
Alabama
Now you're
staples,
talking.
that I grew up with.
Yeah.
The coleslaw dressing. She had a creamy dressing in her fridge, and she had the old vinaigrette. The salt and pepper,
Mhm.
salad oil, and white vinegar. She'd shake up and put on cucumbers and onions. And that was the salad. But yeah, I mean, I literally grew up with those things. It's what's familiar. Her baked beans, same thing. It's like I do an Alabama baked bean. They're a little
Mhm.
sweeter. They have brown sugar and onions in them, and but she didn't have a barbecue pit to cook them on, so
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
we do that. But it's Southern good cooking. It's
Mhm.
solid good cooking. We don't use seed oils in the restaurant. We render our own tallow, and it's either tallow, olive oil, or whole butter. That's
Mhm.
it. We don't have any butter flavored grill oils or margarine or any of that kind of crap. It's
Mhm.
Daisy sour cream. It's real butter. It's all that expensive stuff. But people respond to that.
Mhm.
I have to tell you, they really respond to that, and they appreciate it. A lot of people won't do the work. It's just
Yeah.
they won't do the work to cook like that.
What about as a chef? This is one that, frankly, if I were to ever do it, which I'm not,
Mhm.
I consider myself a really good backyard pit master, and that's where it ends.
Mhm.
I would love the fact that in barbecue, and maybe this speaks to the culture. If you're a chef at a premium restaurant, as you have been, you
Mhm.
never really see or interact with the front of house,
Mhm.
unless they bring you
Mhm.
out or whatever but in barbecue, you
Mhm.
are interacting and getting that immediacy, that immediate feedback, and
Mhm.
that back and forth with customers. Is that
Mhm.
something that sort of resonates with you?
Yeah, but before we opened Rafa's, um, I was always in closed kitchens, right? Always
Yeah.
in the back, always downstairs or upstairs or behind doors. Nobody ever saw. So I would come out only if they requested or this or
Mhm.
that. Rafa's, and we talked about this. Like it was an open kitchen design, right? You had the
Mhm.
the pass, and the arch, and you could see back in there. And I said, man, you sure you want an open kitchen? I was like, yeah, I think it's cool. People want to be seen and be seen, and
Mhm.
it's nice for even the cooks to look out and seeing the guests enjoying what they're doing. And
Yeah.
plus I tell people it's kind of like another manager. You better be clean and you better be organized and not have
Mhm.
trash everywhere because people are watching you. And I
Yeah.
use that. My kitchen at Firecraft is completely open. I mean, I
Mhm.
have an open kitchen. You come back, see how we do things. I don't have any secrets. You
Yeah.
come back, tool around, I'll show you the pit, I'll show you this, I'll show you the walk-in.
Mhm.
And so we're kind of open like that, there. And I like that. I like that personality. So I see them when they come in the door, and we have a section like, I want you, if you want to sample something, just ask, or
Yeah.
I ask them, hey, have you been in before? Are you familiar with the program? A lot of
Yeah.
them I recognize, of course, and I know. But if I don't recognize them really, I'll say, hey, are you familiar with the program?
Mhm.
Are you want to try the turkey? You want to try the this, or a little end cut a rib or something, and we have
Yeah.
little paper boats, and I let them try anything they want before they buy. It's expensive. I don't want the people guessing or taking a chance either.
Yeah. It's expensive on both ends. It's expensive for you.
Yeah.
Proteins right now
Mhm.
are going through the roof,
Mhm.
and so maybe that's part of it as well. A couple more things here before I let you go, because I could go on forever. But
Mhm.
you mentioned prices. Was that ever a detriment? Was that ever something that you had to really fight? How do you stay in business? You got to keep the doors open, man.
Well, we just expanded too. So for me to get in business, we didn't have the money. What I did was I did like a capital campaign,
Hmm.
from most of my catering contacts, and that we called it Friends of Firecraft. And
Hmm.
so what I did is I basically, for any entrepreneur or anybody that wants to open their own business, you can follow this model. It worked for me. was I basically pre-sold barbecue, and gave people, even lifetime discounts
Mm-hmm.
and special, first invitations to come to a wine dinner or a party that we threw, or a semi-annual event. They would get first dibs on seating and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I'll get choked up if I talk about it too much. But it really, literally, my community wrote me checks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
raised like $46,000 or something doing that.
Mm-hmm.
About 46,000, and then I had a business plan. Of course, I was turned down 3 or 4 times, and I found an investor that believed in me, and he was a guy that knew me from Rafa's days and Tony and our partnership together. So it worked out. But yeah, no, it you have to provide the value, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if people, my dad always told me, he said, son, there's always be somebody that'll pay for quality. You just have to bring it. And that's really what I've found is you have to bust your ass. You have to work hard and provide quality and value to people, and they value, that, hey, that's the best brisket I've ever had.
Yeah.
Well, they perceive that value. And we don't have a microscope on our scale. I want the trays to be full and not skimpy.
Mm-hmm.
I see some of these pictures of places, and they're like, I spent $45, and there's
Yeah.
two
Two
slices of
pieces. Yeah.
lean on the thing. You're like, yeah, I know, come on.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take. It's an ebb and flow in the business. We just went through that little back to school slowdown, I would call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to probably worry too much about that kind of stuff. I just have to trust God and trust my team and know that if we're doing what we're supposed to do, then we'll make it.
Well, that's great advice. Good information for anybody out there. Really, not even necessarily in the restaurant, food services industry or anything like that. One more thing, and I'll let you go. Before I ask you the question, what is the protein? What is the cut of meat that people absolutely give you the most compliments about? Is it close? I'm sure it's close.
It's a good one, man. No, I really love short ribs. I really love, either smoking and braising or anything to do with short. I think that, that A129 A and B plate that's the best cut of meat on the whole animal,
All right. So that leads to the question. Give our guys a tip or two. How do you do your short ribs on a given day?
Well, I would rub short ribs. Also pork belly too. Pork belly is probably my favorite, and
Okay.
they're both kind of the same thing as you. With pork belly, we cure it for 4 or 5 days in a good rub, a little pink salt, and treat it like bacon, and then smoke it until it's about 165, 170. It's got enough smoke on it, and then I actually submerge it in pork fat, and then I'll confit it, the old French technique, and confit it, and then let it cool in the fat, and the fat will solidify all around it. Take it out. You take your hands and you basically, swoop all the fat away, and then put it back on the pit. Let the fat drip off, and then when it's cold, you can get a good clean cut on it, right? When it's warm, it'll just fall apart in your mouth. It'll melt in your mouth, But that's what I like doing is that tried and true French technique. Same thing. Smoke a short rib, rub it, whatever seasoning you're into, but really it's about the smoking of it, get the flavor on it, and then braising it, right? Until it's just unctuous and perfect. The stick to your lips, the collagen, the albumin, the gelatin, the stick to your lips is what people respond to.
That's awesome. Well, man, it's Firecraft Barbecue, David Welch. Highly recommend that folks go out there if you're ever in the Northeast corridor up toward Kingwood. I also want to remind people to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We do this every week. We have some great people on here. Man, I really appreciate your time. This has been great stuff, and hopefully a lot of people get out there and really start enjoying what you're doing out there, because I know it's good. I've been a customer myself.
Well, thank you and again, it's an honor, and congratulations to you and your time on the radio, your career, and your sauce is out there, man. It's been out there for a while, man.
It's been doing
the
pretty
OG,
well.
the OG, yeah. But just congratulations on that, man. Sticking with it.
I appreciate it. Hey, it pays for gas money for my boat.
That's right, baby. That's right.
There we go. This is the Bite Meat Podcast. That has been David Welch. You guys don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to have some barbecue this week and have a great week. It's a good tailgating time. Great weekend. Smoke it up. We will talk to you next time.